Let's now develop the second test method for the entry class. And this is the one I would like to eventually trace thoroughly to with the debugger versus the paper together with you, like how I did it for the last video for part 1. It's actually very crucial for your learning. But let's now develop the test case first. But we can do quite a bit of copy and pasting, but I'll do that in a moment. Okay, let me just again make some space so we are now at the center of the screen. Easier for you to see. All right, so now let's now do the second case. So add test, right? Always remember public void and test entry underscore 2. Okay, that'll be the second one. It will be a very similar flow of the test that we want to do as the first one, except that I want to show you more about how we can switch using exploiting the phenomenon of aliasing from one product to another for the entry. So for a particular entry, you don't necessarily have to be bound to this to the same product, every time, right? So let's say for the same serial number, it might be tied into maybe iPad Pro for maybe 256 gigabytes, but the manufacturer might decide maybe to expand the storage maybe internally, so that this for the same serial number for that product, it will become maybe 1 terabytes for the storage, just for example. Okay. Let me show you exactly what I mean by defining the test case. Test case is the most precise documentation I can provide to really show what I really mean. Let me first of all just get this entry over here, right? So for the first part, it will be the same as before, okay? The same assertion. But I will show you something different by building on top. That's what I will do. Okay, so this we'll still have this product P. We explained that before, and also we got this entry, right? So just to get us more concentrated, so you should really know that this one shouldn't be done this way, but you should really look up why from the earlier part when I explained it. Okay, and then let me just get it as simple as possible. Okay, so the entry E, after executing this line, is going to set its product to be the same objects that is actually pointed by P. All right, that's basically aliasing, but I will review what aliasing is, and then I'll trace it together with you. I just want to give you some like a look ahead. Okay, so after this, we'll do something new. Okay, the new thing I would like to do is let me create a new product first of all. So let's say product P2, right? You can see P2 as opposed to P, right? It's a different variable, which presumably might store different address of the different objects. Not necessarily always the case, but in this case, yes. Okay, so let me say iPad Air over here, comma. Let's say it's a model name. Let's say maybe 649. I just made it up like that. Okay, it's different products, but somehow my eventual goal is to say I want to change this particular entry with the serial number over here, rather than pointing to this particular product's objects as its associated product. I wanted to point to this product instead as its associated product. That's my goal. All right, but I'm gonna visualize that in a moment. Once I got P2, of course I can verify a few things. Before I verify a few things, I can definitely do some setup by calling the mutated methods. I can say P2.setFinish. Sorry, P2.setFinish. So let's say it's gold. Okay, or rose gold if you prefer, but let's say gold. And P2.setStorage. P2.setStorage over here. And as the storage is 64 gigabytes. Okay, just making notes over here. 64 gigabytes. And then we got P2.set has cellular connectivity. Let's say this one is false. However, I would like to make a note over here to say this line here will be unnecessary, because if you recall from part 1, I'll just mention that quickly. From part 1, if we actually call this overloaded constructor over here, we are basically leaving all the other attributes other than model and original price to their default value, including the connectivity, which will be false. So if I just reset false to false, it's unnecessary, but I'll just put it there to be explicit. But I should really understand why I put unnecessary over here, right? And one more thing I'd like to set will be P2.set discount value, okay, the first hit, and then let's say $100, like that. Oh, I can put to 0, doesn't matter. Okay, let's say after this, what I would like to do is that I say I want to change E2's associated products from P to P2, right? It's really important for you to see this English description over here, but of course the most precise way is to visualize that in a moment. Is here, oh sorry, not E2, beg your pardon, that should be E. All right, the products for E has been set to P up to this point, and then I'm gonna change it. I would say E.set products, right? I do have this mutated method. In that case, I can say rather than P, I can say P2, right? Remember set products. Let me review very quickly. If you go back to the entry class, and then if you go to set products, right? That's the default version that's generated by Eclipse. And that one's expecting some reference of some product objects, right? I'm passing that, in this case, P2 over here, okay? So after this, what can we assert? Let me assert the following. Okay, so what I will do is, you know what, before I yes, what I want to do is I want to actually copy these assertions over here, right? If you can do that for me, please, that'll be great. Copy these 4 assertions, 1 2 3 4. Okay, copy them, right click, and then copy. Okay, and then after this mutated method call, I just leave an empty line there so you can clearly see what will actually make the impact. And then you would say paste over here. Okay. Number 1, E.get serial number should really have the same serial number. This line is not supposed to change serial number. It's only supposed to change the associated product reference. Okay. And now, should this password fail? Let's find out. If I say run over here, you can see it failed. Let's see exactly where it failed. I maximize the tab. And you can see it's exactly over here. If I double click, it is this reference that's failing, right? I'm not sure if you can imagine the diagram maybe in your head. If you cannot, that's okay. I'm going to go over that with you. But I can tell you that it's no longer true, okay? So I would say false. And of course, assert saying will not be true anymore, but we do have something called assert not saying, right? You can see obviously what its meaning is, right? Not the same. So this is to say, after executing this mutated call, which is presumably will set the associated products for the context object, which is E, from P to P2. So that means it's no longer the case, meaning that assert false should really pass. No longer the case that E.get products will give you the reference, the same reference that as that is stored in P, right? That's why. And then I'm gonna put 2 more assertions over here. Okay. What if I really want to say assert true and assert same? What if I want to have something like that, right? Let me just put it here, right? I really want to have something assert true and also assert same. Is it possible to have some expression over here? And E.get products, I can put some question mark over here and also question mark over here. Why don't you pause the video and tell me what should I fill in over there in the question mark in order to pass the assert true and also assert same? Apparently, I cannot put P over here. Can I put something else? All right, assuming that you thought about it, the answer is, well, of course, P2 over here, since P2 is what we change from P into, right, as the associated products. P2, hopefully you can still already follow my verbal remarks over here. Of course, everything will be crystal clear once I try to visualize the tracing. Okay, P2. So this is good. And then I believe we have to also change the string over here, right? Because you can see this particular guy, right? As we said in the earlier video, this is the result from, in this case, should be the expected value is actually still the old products before this mutated call, right? You can see the old product is actually here. It's iPad Pro 12.9 Space Gray. It's exactly the old product over here, right? That used to be the case. But since we already changed that into P2 after this line, so now we should change that accordingly. Why don't we change it together, okay, manually? Serial number stayed the same, but now it should be iPad Air rather than iPad Pro 12.9, iPad Air. Rather than space gray, it should be gold, right? Remember, we got a gold over here. Rather than 1000 gigabytes, it should be 64 over here, right? And then connectivity rather than true, it should be false. What's the original price? It should be this one. I can copy that and then I can paste it over here. And what's the discount value? 100.00 over here. Right? That's what we have. Right? Once I trace it together with you, it'll be crystal clear. But let's now run the test case. We get a green bar. All right? That's very good. I want to do one more switch of the products. I want to do one more. Since we got another set products, like an overloaded version of the set product method, why don't we do that as well for completeness? So what I would do is, let me go back to maximize tab. And then let me try to do this. If you don't mind, I'm going to copy these guys over here. I'm going to copy. Okay. I'll change whatever that's necessary accordingly. But since you can see the indentation is out of place, remember how we fixed the indentation from part 1? Okay. You got to say Command A or Control A to select everything. Command I or Control I. I standing for indentation. That will fix the indentation. Okay. So now, rather than P2, right, what we change is associated product from P2 to another object. Okay, I don't really, this object here, I don't really know what it is because we don't have a variable to store its address because we're calling a different mutator here, which will be over here. So rather than P2 over here, why don't we say, let me just look up my notes very quickly. Okay, I would say the following. Let me say iPad Air. This will be interesting. iPad Air. You can see I deliberately choose the same model as P2. I deliberately do that, right? And then, what about the original price? I will also deliberately choose the same price as before, 649. Okay, I'll paste it here, the same. I say another object. When I say another object, I really meant by another location, in another distinct location in the memory. All right. So now you tell me, are these assertions still going to pass? Without running the JUnit assertion, we want to be logical. Okay. Are they going to pass or fail? If anything is going to fail, which one or ones? Pause the video and think about it. All right, assuming that you thought about it, let's be very logical here, right? Since we know we are going to change from each associated product from P2 to another object, what's that another object? Let's be careful about this, right? Since we're calling e.setProducts, and let's review what e.setProduct is for this overloaded version. If you go to entry and go to the overloaded version over here, you can see what we said in the earlier video. What this will do is the user of the set products, you can think about we are now the user of the set products. We didn't have to actually create a product object and pass it over here. Whereas when we were the user of this particular version of the set products, we have to create the product object, which is exactly the P2. So you can see in order to call that version, we had to create this version of the product, right? You can see it's different. By calling different versions of the methods, you as the user, you have different obligation. You have different responsibility to make sure you pass the right type of arguments. All right, let me go back to the point. The point is, if we go back to entry over here, you can see this version here. What it will do is it's going to create internally a local product object, and this local object is somehow invisible from outside. That's why I simply said another object. I didn't say which object it is, but when I visualize it, you will see exactly how this will happen. You will obviously see there's a different object. This object P over here that we create certainly will not be equal to, for example, the P over here, and also it will not be the same object as P2, simply because we got a new keyword here, a new keyword here, and also a new keyword over here. And when I spoke about the new keyword in the in part 1, every separate use of the new keyword is going to guarantee you create a separate object in a distinct location in the memory. It's guaranteed. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the logic I'm trying to explain to you. So I'm pretty sure e.getProduct over here should really be returning the address of this local objects that the address of this local object I've created using this overloaded version of the mutator, right? It's guaranteed to be different from P. It's guaranteed also different from P2. However, for P2, I'm still asserting true, right? So I can anticipate these two assertions will actually fail. Of course, this one will fail first. Let's verify. Okay, if I run it, it failed first of all, and then if I maximize this, you can see the first failure point is exactly over here. So that means apparently P is not the same as the return object reference. That's for sure, right? That one's passing. But P2, since we said assert true from the previous one, we just copy and paste. It's no longer true. So what we should do instead is by saying false over here. And if I rerun it, I still fail. Where? Double click on that. So assert same, right? So assert same is basically the same as this guy over here. Since this is going to be false, so I know that correspondingly it should be not same. Oh, not same. Like that. Hopefully you're okay. All right. And then I'm still expecting that to fail because if I double click on that, the toString method is not really returning this. It's not really returning the correct value. Let's see why. Okay. So what I will do is I'm going to double click on this. Okay. What's happening over here is it's going to give me a null and 0 gigabytes. Can you see why over here? All right. The reason is okay. Well, it's a question for you. You can pause the video and think about it. Why are we returning some null? Let me show you again. Why are we returning some null over here? And also 0 gigabytes. Why? Okay, pause the video and think about the answer. Assuming that you thought about it, it's because this line over here, we are trying to set the products of E into a newly created local object of products, which according to this overloaded version over here is going to call this overloaded version of the constructor from the product class, which we covered before. And this one here is only going to set the model and the original price of the product objects, whereas things like discount price, finish, storage will all get their default values. So this is why you will see here we got null and also 0 gigabytes. So that should be the correct expected value instead. All right, that's really important. Okay. All right. So now the only thing that will be set will be iPad Air and also 649. That's the only one. So for the gold, rather than gold, is going to be null because it has not been set yet by this local objects that's been created inside the set products. Okay. Hopefully you're following. Rather than 64, it's going to be 0, and it will still be false, just default. And rather than 100. We have not set the discount value yet, so that'll be 0. All right. If I try to rerun the test, green bar. All right. So that's the second case I would like to speak about. I think it's really important for you to really understand what's going on. Well, if you can already imagine the picture, the diagrams I'm going to visualize when I do the tracing, then I would say you're doing very well in terms of the review. If you're still struggling, that's okay. This is the point to really get through that obstacle. Indeed. Okay, before I do the tracing on the debugger and the paper, I would like to review very quickly what object reference aliasing really is. Let me first point to you the slides that you're supposed to study from last week, from part 1. You're supposed to study up to slide 49. What I want you to study will be slide 50, which will go over, first of all, primitive value, and you also talk about the reference value as well. So this is a nice slide to show you the simplest example to show the difference, right? You can go over that. And then we have some problems, some exercise for you to also go over. If you got any trouble about the answer, you can definitely put it on the Q&A or maybe get in touch with me. I'll explain that to you. So this is one example here where the array is simply of integer type versus the second exercise I want you to do. the second example I want you to do is over here. And in this case, you can see the array over here is of type person. We're assuming that we got a person class where we actually got the name and the age, right? The person class is actually in the context of the review slide, so you should really know what person class is. And then what I want you to do for this exercise over here is to really try to visualize what's going on for these lines from line number 1 to line number 14, and then to see if you are able to work out the outputs from 15, 16, and 17 without using the console application, right? You don't want to really just rely on the Eclipse. In a written test, you wouldn't have that time, luxury, to actually type out the code and check by the computer. If you got any struggle with going over this particular example, you can simply click on this link over here. It links to my lecture back in Winter 21, and then that one will actually go over this exercise in detail with you. If you find it necessary, go ahead and do it. And then we got one more slide over here. So this one talks about whenever we declare attribute in the class, it may store the reference to another object. So what example have we seen? Well, the serial number of string type is a reference type. Also, we got the products in the entry class, which also store the address to some product objects, right? So this is just another example here. For example, you can see a class person. Every person, a person may have some spouse, for example, of the same type person. Okay. And then you will also see the reference type can also be the parameter type. For example, set products. In this case, Mary, right? And also, you may also return some reference type. So this is a slightly more complicated example. You can think about, remember, get products. Get products will actually return the products. But in this case, we are trying to return the point. And then, so there will be some tracing over here going on. You should really go over that. You can refer to, as I said before, you can refer to the corresponding lecture part if you have doubts about how to trace this, or post this on the Q&A documents, and I can go over that with you if you got any doubts. All right, so that's about the reference aliasing related slides I want you to review. Now I want to go over again about the definition for reference aliasing together with you.